Hi everyone, Armoured Pants here, and I have another review for you. This is the new premium tank, the Tier 8 American Heavy, the Chrysler K. Before we get into that though, because this is a heavy tank and you may not have played one before, let's look at side scraping and angling in some detail. So, what we're going to do is look at some angling mechanics. Let's take this is a plate of armour, let's say it's 90 millimeters thick. Now, what we are going to do is look at what happens when a shell is fired with that. A shell is 120 millimeters of pen. 120 is greater than 90, so it goes straight through. So when the armor plate is flat on to the shell being fired at it, it's 90 millimeters is not thick enough to withstand 120 millimeters of pen. The shell goes straight through. Pretty simple, right? Now, what happens if we angle that armor plate? So now we have angled the armor plate. It's about at a 45-degree angle, as you can see. Now, when we fire at it, a 120 millimeter pen shell actually bounces. Why? Because the relative thickness of the armor is now more than 90 millimeters at the angle that the shell hits it at. If you do not believe that, have a look here. This is the original outline of the armor plate, the 90 millimeters. Look how much thicker the armor is than its original 90 millimeters because of the angle, and that's why the shell bounces. Now, what happens if you, though, are front onto something? As you can see, an experienced player will fire through the front and it will go through. Now, that's why we side scrape. So, an inexperienced player will pull out from behind cover, just like this house, side on, and he gets penned, as in the first example. However, an experienced player who side scrapes will pull up to the object, the house, or whatever the cover is, like this. Now, even though he can be seen, the back of the tank can be seen, when the shell is fired, it bounces because look how thick the armour is at the point of impact of the shell, and that's the original 90 millimeters. Much thicker, right? So the shell bounces. When you side scrape then, when you want to come out to shoot, you come out at this angle, putting the turret out at the fire, and you're still creating an acute angle that bounces the shell. The armour is significantly more thicker still, even though not quite as thick as when you're flat on. And that is basic mechanics of how to side scrape. Now look at over angling. So sometimes you're trying to side scrape but you get penned. Why is that? Because you over angle. Let's take our 90 millimeter again plate. Let's take this arrow representing 120 millimeters of pen, so it goes straight through. And again, let's use our outline so we can determine the plate thickness when we look at angles. So, firstly, we angle up. We can see when the shell hits at that angle, it will not go through because the armor is now thicker, plus it is considerably thicker than the 120 millimeters of the pen. That's how to make a 90 millimeter plate much thicker. Now, if you over angle like this, you are making the armor thicker but not thick enough, and the 120 millimeters of pen still goes through. This is not how to angle. You are basically over angling there. You are still making the armor thicker. As you can see, when we look at the outline of the original armor plate, it is thicker than the 90 millimeters, but it is not 120 millimeters thick, and therefore the shell goes through, and that is over angling. So let's have a look at the tech spec of this tank. I hope you found that useful because it's very applicable to this tank, because this tank is a side scraping monster, and if you don't have to side scrape an angle, you won't be able to play this tank properly. So I thought it would be good to look at that side scraping and angling tutorial again before we get into this particular tank. Now, the gun on this tank is relatively weak for heavy, I would think, although it does have a decent rate of fire with an 8.67 second reload. But it's a 105mm gun, and it has weaker pen than other heavy tanks. So, for example, if you compare it to an IS-3 or an IS-6, you will see that it is lacking in pen. Even compared, let's say, to the Löwe, which has a similar rate of fire, it is lacking a bit, I think. The Löwe has a 110mm cannon. So it does lack a bit of pen, I found, when I'm playing with it. But you know, it is pretty nimble and fast tank, actually. It does 40 kilometers an hour and accelerates pretty quickly, so that's a bit unusual for a heavy tank. Now this tank, looking at the armour, it's a side scraping beast. Just look at some of these numbers that we're creating here on sides. You know, 800 millimeters of relative armour. This is really impressive. And this tank, and you will see it in the games that we're going to look at, you will see this tank side scrape and bounce shots. This is kind of an optimal firing position for you. You can see that we're creating some really good angles here that will bounce shots, and the turret itself is really strong. There is a slight weak point here. I tried to hit it a few times when I came up against the Chrysler K in one of the games, but I wasn't able to. So you know, even though it's a weak point, it's a small target. You see here, if you look at the external modules, they're exposed, so you use 2 repair kits. The lower plate is weak, so protect that. If you're side scraping properly though, you will be protecting that. So just be aware that you can get penned front on in the lower plate, so you need to protect that. Either put something solid in front of it or angle it up. But even angled up, it's still vulnerable. Better if you can get some solid object in front of it, like a rock or something like that, or the carcass of another burnt out tank, which I do in one of the games that we're going to look at. It's also a hull down tank. You can go hull down too, so it also allows for those tactics. And actually, in the first game we look at, I combine a side scraping and a hull down position to get a really good position on the map, Rockfield. I'm really able to sort of influence the game there. So we're going to have a look at that now in this gameplay. So overall, just to summarize, relatively fast, mobile, heavy tank, brilliant side scraping armour, brilliant turret armour, weakish gun, not the best in its class. You'll find it difficult to pen things. You'll need a bit of APCR to pen things. For example, a KB4 front on, you'll need APCR to pen that, so load up on some APCR. Now, we're at Rockfield here, so I decided to go up left. I'm hoping to get to those bunkers before the enemy. The fact that this tank is, as I said, pretty mobile allows it to get there, and I can get a very good position. Now, this is a similar tank in the way it's played to the IS-2H. It has a rear-mounted turret, and obviously that means you have to come out at angle. So the temptation, if you're an inexperienced player, is to go outside on, but that presents a huge target to the enemy. So please do resist that temptation. And that's why, in fact, I included a side scraping tutorial again in the front of this video, because you will need to side scrape. You need to come out, as you will see me coming out here, not side on, but backing out like this to get your shots away. So you can see here I'm combining a sort of side scraping and turret down position. So backing out to shoot from a side scraping position to get some shots on, only exposing the turret, so going from a side scraping to a turret down position. If we look at this sequence of play here in instant replay, we can see how I bounce that shot off the turret. The turret's really strong, and then I put round through this weak point underneath the turret, just between the turret and the hull on the KB4. I use APCR just to make sure, because as I said, the pen is a bit weak on it, especially for a big monster like the KB4, KB5. You will struggle a bit, so load up with a bit of APCR. You see there another bounce again, plus I put a round through the turret of the IS-3. So you can see now I'm in a really good position. This is a really strong position here. It's impossible for him to get shots onto me. This is where I try to in this exchange here with the other Chrysler K, I tried to put a shot through that vulnerable part we looked at in the tech review. But unfortunately I wasn't able to do it, and as I said, it's a very small target. You see there, I missed it, or I hit it, it didn't go through, one or the other. So, but that's good news for me as well, because it means that the enemy will find it difficult to hit me, right? So, this position is really strong and really suits this tank. I'm just rolling backwards and forwards, I'm attracting fire, I'm bouncing shots. As you can see, I haven't taken a single hit point of damage yet, and I'm putting damage into the enemy. Another one through the IS-3 there. So I'm doing a really good job for my team. I'm holding this corner, I'm not taking damage, so I'm conserving the total hit pool points of our team, and I'm putting damage onto the enemy. Now I decide to see what's going on. I look around, I see now that the reds are occupied, so now it's time to move up. So I leave this really strong position. I'm going to move up and see what damage I can do and try to gauge the enemy. It's obvious now that they've turned their guns onto my allies, so I don't want to leave them in the lurch, so I'm going to push up and see what damage I can do. Again, I bounced there. You see what I mean about the gun. You see what I mean about the angles on this. But look here now, I go into a side scraping position, and I fire, and I bounce a shot from my Chrysler K, and I actually able to put one through. Now, I'm just going to slow this right down to 25% on the instant replay, because I want you to see and take note of the angles that I'm creating here. I think this is a particularly good example because I'm actually against my compatriot, right? So I'm against exactly the same tank. So you see, this is what I meant about the lower plate. I just put one through on the APCR there. I angle up, and you see I get the bounce there off the side. And as we saw in the tech review, when we looked at the tech spec, he was aiming at about 800 millimeters plus of relative armour there, so really difficult for him to pen. Put another one through the KV4, and you can see these guys now, they're getting really frustrated. They can't get shots onto me. I take one shot here, but that's because I wanted to put a shot into the Super Pershing, and I was happy enough to take a small hit for that. Put another one into the KV4 here, and now I can move around. I'm going to angle up so that the KV4 doesn't have a shot. I'm going to use the dead hook of the other Chrysler, and then I get a safety shot into him. Safety insofar as he wasn't getting any shot on me. Get the kill shot on the IS-3 here, who I was tormenting during the game. Come back around, I think, and I think that is the end of the Super Pershing. So you can see I took one hit through all of that exchange. I received a number of rounds. So not only did I not take damage myself, I inflicted almost 3k damage on the enemy. So if you net that off, it's almost 5.5k of net damage I did. That is damage blocked plus damage inflicted. So you can see how effective this tank can be if you can get it into the right position. Of course, it has weaknesses. If you're caught out in the open, the sides are vulnerable when they're flat. The back is vulnerable. Your rear mounted turret will make it difficult for you, or less, let's say, more difficult for you to brawl, because you've got to swing that tracks around to get on target. But if you're able to get into a strong position, this tank really performs well. Now I'm gone hell for leather here. Why? I've adapted this position on this map before. If I've got a tank with a really strong turret, if you've seen the Luva review I did, or the low review, however you would like to pronounce it, I went to this position too. Why? Because the tank, both of those tanks have really strong turrets, easy to get hull down. So this hill here is protecting my hull, and I'm able to just expose the turret, and I can put in damage when somebody pops up like this rim here, whom the guy and our Stuart Emil was very afraid of, but we've kind of smashed him a bit now. So I know that their meds are over there, meds and lights are over there. I can see the IS-2, so I decide to push on here. This is something I often do on this map too. If I know where their heavies are, you can push around up this gully, come in on the side and behind the enemy, and start to really do some damage, and then we clear that rim. So it's nice to get that big gun out of the way. And this is what I said about earlier when we were looking at the side scraping in the tech spec. I'm going to use the carcass of this rim now to create side scraping angles for me. It actually allow me to get more shots onto them and to bounce a lot of shots. So you see, bounce another shot there off the turret, put another one into the IS, and now as they push onto me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back into a side scraping position, bounce one off the front there as I angled backwards, and now I'm going to go into a classic side scraping position using this carcass of this rim, and I'm just going to put some shots into these guys here. Do get a bounce there, you see what I meant, sorry, it doesn't pen there, you see what I meant about the gun. So we switch up to APCR. I just want to make sure that these shots are going through. That one goes straight through with the APCR. And again, I just want to slow this down. Let's look at 50% speed on the instant replay, how I am using the carcass of the rim to create angles. I'm bouncing a shot, pull back, and then fire one into him. So this is a really good example of how to side scrape using something which is, let's say, a mobile piece of cover, in that it wasn't there before and the game started. We created that, and this is great because it allows me to side scrape without going full into the wall, so I have a much better fields of fire. Now this IS gets a rush of blood to the head, the IS-2, and he's trying to really go for the kill on my ally here, and unfortunately for him that didn't really work out, and we were able to clear him. Bam, he's gone. Again, getting this rush of blood to the head. He just like really wanted to kill, and that Indian Panzer ended up being killed himself. I know it's a temptation in the game, guys. Try to resist it if you can. Again, you know, it is a temptation, I know, but then you just expose yourself and just take shots from two enemies, as he did there, and then his game is over and he can no longer influence it. But then that's what happens when you frustrate players, and he was getting really frustrated because of my side scraping. He just could not pen me, getting really frustrated. And then when players get frustrated, they make mistakes. So that is also a key thing about side scraping, blocking damage. If you saw the heavy tank guide I did, you saw on that when in the example game of side scraping into E75 how frustrated I made the Ag Tiger. Then in the end he resorted to firing HE at me to do, like, you know, 100 damage. While my teammates were able to come around behind and clear them up. So, you know, when you frustrate players by side scraping or blocking damage well, you really do force them or push them or goad them into making mistakes. And with this tank, if you play it well and side scrape an angle, as we've just seen here, you will goad them into making mistakes, as the IS-2 did there. So you see, the tank will block shots even from big guns like the IS-2, the IS-3, that we saw, the KV-4 that we saw within the 2 games we just looked at, and you know, it will perform for you. This is just, I just played like 6-7 games in it today. I already got a first class mastery badge. I guess when not so many players are playing it in the next few weeks, maybe the mastery badge will come or not. But nonetheless, an enjoyable tank. I liked playing it. I found it good. It's very interesting heavy tank with the rear mounted turret. It's unusual. It's also unusual in that it's a new tank, hasn't been out before, so people may want to collect it for that reason. Unfortunately, I don't have the credit coefficient figures on it yet, but hopefully as a premium tank it will earn good credits. It's mobile for heavily armoured. It's basically your kind of classic modern heavy battle tank. It is a side scraping, angling monster. You can go hull down too. You saw there I combined the side scraping, angling, and the hull down tactics to good effect in the first game we looked at. The gun is low caliber, 105mm for a heavy tank. Has decent handling, as you saw, but and average alpha rolls, but its pen is lacking a bit for a heavy tank. I find it mediocre at best, and therefore you will need to load up APCR, and of course then that's going to cost you credits or gold, and hopefully you're using credits, not gold, for your APCR and premium rounds. But hopefully as a premium tank we'll earn those credits back for you. It really is great for bouncing, as you saw there. I mean, I think in both of those games I bounced almost 6,000 damage, 5,500, something like that, which is incredible in 2 games. Use supercharge and refined gun on it, because you really need to improve that gun, get that muzzle velocity up and get that long distance pen up. It's 15,000 or 17,000 gold fully equipped in the shops, which is almost €50. It's pretty expensive, I have to say. So, you know, I do think it is on the expensive side, but it is unusual. It is a decent tank, so if you've got some money it may be worthwhile, but that is your own personal decision because it is a bit expensive. If you've got credits, by the way, buy it without the equipment for 15,000. Alright, take care, cheers Mush, hope you enjoyed it. Pants out.